and I know what dreams feel like. I've had nightmares. I've had sleep paralysis. I know when I'm awake, and I was awake. What still haunts me isn't what I saw. It's that I touched it, felt the weight, the shape, the size. It was solid. If it was a shadow person, how could I wrap my arms around it? Welcome to Dark Reddit, your late-night escape into eerie calm. I'm Alex, your voice in the dark and your guide through the unknown. This is Podcast 17, a shadowy chapter in our ever-growing collection of sleepless nights. Tonight's journey spans an hour and 1 minute, a series of chilling tales whispered into your ears softly, slowly, designed to help your mind drift while the darkness unfolds around you. Before we begin, find a quiet, comfortable place to rest. Dim the lights, silence your world, and take one slow, steady breath. Now close your eyes. Every story in tonight's episode is new, uncharted, untold, and unearthed from the darker corners of Reddit. Tales of strangers, shadows, and things that don't always stay in the past. Let your body grow heavy. Let your thoughts drift. You don't need to watch. You only need to listen. You're safe here. Now, let the night begin. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what you hear, it's who hears it with you. It started with a conversation, just a regular night, phone in hand, lying on my bed while someone told me a story. Nothing unusual, but by the end of that summer, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something had been listening in, too. Back in August of 2016, I was 16 years old and in a relationship that honestly had too many red flags I chose to ignore. My girlfriend at the time could be intense, always jumping to conclusions, always a bit on edge. So when she suddenly interrupted her own story mid-sentence to ask, "Who's the girl you're with?" I rolled my eyes. "I'm alone," I said. "I'm literally in my room. No one else is here." There was a pause. Then, in a quieter voice, she said, "I just heard a girl." She said something about breaking in through the window. I sat up, a little confused. "What are you talking about? There's no one in the house. No TV on, no nothing." She didn't sound like she was playing. She genuinely believed she heard another voice, specifically a girl, talking about breaking into the house. I brushed it off. Maybe she was paranoid. Maybe the call glitched and played some weird audio. I didn't know, and I didn't care enough at the time to dwell on it. We broke up a few weeks later, and I filed the moment away as one of her weird, jealous episodes. But that wasn't the end of it. Fast forward to October, a couple months later. Different girl, this time just a friend. Nothing romantic. Same setup though. I'm in my room, lights dim, phone pressed to my ear while she told me something that I honestly wasn't paying full attention to. Then she stopped talking. I figured she forgot what she was saying. "What's up?" I asked, and she said, "I just heard your mom or someone talking to you. Who's there with you?" That time, my heart dropped a little. "I'm home alone," I said. "No one's been here all night." She didn't answer right away, and when she did, her voice was quiet, cautious. "Someone's talking about breaking in through the window." I sat up, heart pounding. "What did you just say?" And then, almost overlapping her words, she continued, "Now I hear a man and a woman. They're talking loudly, kind of arguing, but weird. The guy sounds creepy, like something out of a horror movie. I got up and stood in my doorway, phone still in hand, trying to hear anything at all from outside my room. Nothing. Silence. But it didn't feel like the normal kind of silence. The air felt heavy, like the calm right before a storm. My hallway, which usually held a bit of warmth from the upstairs vents, felt icy, almost like someone had left a window open. But every window was shut tight. I whispered into the phone, "I'm going downstairs." As I walked down, she kept narrating. "They're gone now," she said. "It just stopped." But it didn't fade out or anything. It was just there, then not. By the time I got to the kitchen, I was trying to convince myself there had to be some explanation. Crossed phone signals? A prank from someone? A coincidence? But I couldn't shake the way both girls, months apart, had said the exact same thing. Someone talking about breaking in through the window. When my mom got home later that night, I tried to play it cool, but she saw the look on my face immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked. I told her everything, from the girlfriend in August to the friend tonight. The repeated voices, the cold hallway, the feeling like someone was in the house who shouldn't be. She didn't laugh or dismiss it. She listened, and then she said, "Let's go upstairs together, just to check." We walked up slowly, both of us holding our breath a little. As we reached the top, right in front of us, one of the bedroom doors slammed shut with a loud bang. We both froze. My mom reached for the doorknob, but just before she touched it, the toilet in the bathroom flushed. We hadn't heard anyone go in. No footsteps, no door creak, just the slam and then the flush. That sound echoed down the hall like a punch. We stood there in silence for what felt like a full minute. Then my mom opened the door, and of course, there was nothing inside. Nothing out of place. No signs of anyone having been there. After that night, the house felt different to me. The feeling lingered, not every day, but enough to notice. Like you'd turn a corner and half expect to see someone standing in the hall, or sit in bed and feel like someone else was in the room, just beyond the foot of your bed where your eyes couldn't reach. I moved out a couple of years later. I didn't say much about that night again, but every now and then my mom will bring it up. "Remember the voice about the window?" she'll say, and every single time, it sends a shiver straight down my spine. I still don't know what it was. Ghost? Time slip? A weird, shared hallucination? Or maybe just some horrible coincidence that repeated itself too perfectly. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, when I hear creaks or strange sounds in my new place, my mind drifts back to that old hallway, to that oddly cold air, and to two different voices months apart, both hearing the same thing. Someone's talking about breaking in through the window. It wasn't a night for horror stories, but somehow we ended up in one anyway. About 6 years ago, something happened that still makes the hair on my neck stand up when I think about it. It wasn't the kind of thing you expect to happen in a neighborhood like ours. Tight-knit, familiar, filled with relatives who all lived on the same few blocks. If you needed sugar or a spare charger, your cousin's house was a 90-second walk away. It was safe, predictable. That's what made what we saw so unsettling. It started on an ordinary evening. The kind of evening where the sun had already dipped but the warmth still lingered in the air. I was standing just outside my house, chatting with one of my cousins, the one who lived directly across from us. Her house was so close you could stand in my front yard and throw a tennis ball onto her porch. She was just about to head home, and we were wrapping up our conversation, half laughing about something I don't even remember now. That's when we saw her. Our other cousin, let's call her Sarah, was walking toward us from the direction of her house. Her face was calm, relaxed, the way you walk when you're heading somewhere familiar. But she wasn't alone. Beside her was someone else. My cousin and I both stopped mid-sentence. We recognized the second girl immediately, another relative of ours who lives in a different city. Let's call her Nadia. We hadn't seen her in a few months, so I assumed she must have arrived as a surprise visit. It wasn't unheard of for family to drop by unannounced. We both figured she'd just tagged along with Sarah. It was dusk, but not dark enough to mistake faces. The girl walking beside Sarah looked exactly like Nadia. Same height, same build, same shoulder-length black hair. She even wore the kind of long cardigan Nadia always favored, the one with white stripes along the sleeves. My cousin nudged me and whispered, "Is that Nadia? Did she come today?" "I guess so," I said. "Let's go over in a bit." Sarah and her companion walked right past us toward the front of my cousin's house. They didn't say anything, just kept walking, as if deep in conversation or just focused on getting inside. They disappeared around the side of the house and into the entryway. About 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Sarah, the cousin we'd seen walking just moments earlier. I answered casually, already imagining all of us hanging out and catching up with Nadia. But Sarah's voice came through the speaker in a panicked whisper. "Who was with me?" I blinked. "What? You were outside, right? You saw me coming over." Her voice was shaky, too serious for what I thought was just a misunderstanding. "Yeah, you were with Nadia, right?" "No," she said, almost like she was trying to convince herself. "I was alone." Now I was confused. "What do you mean?" "We both saw you. You were walking right next to her. You were side by side." "I swear I was alone," she repeated, and her voice cracked. "I even rang the bell alone, went inside alone. But when I saw you and your cousin standing outside, I thought you saw me. So why are you saying you saw someone with me?" I turned to my cousin, who had gone pale. She'd been listening from beside me, and the blood seemed to drain from her face. "Tell her," I said, handing her the phone. "Tell her what you saw." They talked for a minute, both of them sounding more anxious by the second. Sarah insisted she hadn't been with anyone. My cousin and I insisted we saw two people walking up the path, clear as day. When Sarah came back to our place shortly after, we asked her to describe exactly what she'd experienced. She said nothing felt strange while she walked. No weird noises, no heavy feeling, no footsteps other than her own. But when we told her what the girl beside her looked like, her face changed completely. "That's exactly what Nadia wears. That's her style," she said quietly. We later confirmed that Nadia hadn't come into town. In fact, she was hours away at home, completely unaware of any of this. She hadn't spoken to Sarah in over a week. That's when it hit us. We had both seen someone who wasn't there. And not just someone random, we saw a family member. Someone familiar. Someone trusted. Over the next few days, we tried to make sense of it. Maybe it was a trick of the light, we told ourselves. Maybe we both imagined the same thing by coincidence. But every time we said that out loud, it felt hollow, empty, because we knew what we saw. We described the girl's clothes, her hair, the way she walked, and everything matched. It wasn't a blur or a shadow or something vague and ghost-like. It was a person, someone walking right beside our cousin, step for step. Someone who never turned, never spoke, just quietly kept pace like she belonged there. And yet she didn't. I still think about that night more than I care to admit, about how confident we were that we knew what we saw, and how quickly that confidence turned to fear. Because if your eyes and your mind can deceive you together, if two people can hallucinate the exact same person, then what does that say about reality? Sometimes, late at night, I look out my window at that same little pathway where we stood. I wonder if anyone else in the family ever saw something strange. I wonder if we caught a glimpse of a ghost that's tied to someone we know. Or maybe we saw a double, a mimic, some spirit trying on a familiar face, just to pass through unnoticed. To this day, no one has an answer. Sarah still swears she was alone, but we'll never forget the girl who walked beside her. I thought I was alone for most of the hike. I wasn't, not even close. For the past 2.5 years, I've lived in the very north of the Scottish Highlands, in a place so far up you can't go any further without falling into the sea. The town I live in now is the northernmost town on the British mainland. It's small, quiet, hauntingly beautiful, and wildly remote. When my dad and his partner said they were buying a house up here, I leapt at the chance to join them. Coming from a gloomy, overcast town in England, I was desperate for something new, something untamed. The idea of seals in the river, orcas in the sea, and northern lights in the sky felt like a dream. But after moving, I learned something the brochures never mention. The Highlands aren't just beautiful, they're ancient, strange, and sometimes unnerving. In my downtime, I often explored the coastline. There's an old ruined castle on the eastern edge of town, and just past that, a cliff trail snakes along the rugged coast. I had walked parts of it before, but never all the way. Not until Boxing Day. That year had been rough. I'd just gotten out of a draining long-distance relationship, and though I finally felt like I was healing, I needed to do something alone to really let it all out. So, on Boxing Day morning, I packed a lunch, threw on my hiking gear, and left at 6 a.m., determined to hike the entire Eastern Trail, no matter how far it went. It was cold but crisp. For hours I walked in silence, save for the crunch of frost beneath my boots and the crashing of waves far below. By evening, I reached something unexpected. First, it looked like a ghost town. Crumbling stone homes sat in tight little rows, all empty and shadowed, their windows dark holes that watched like eyes. There were rusted old fishing boats pulled up near doorways, their paint chipped and weathered by sea air. An old stone tower, broken but still imposing, stood near the edge of it all. Turns out it was a heritage center, an old port settlement preserved for tourists, but it felt like I'd stumbled across something time forgot. I'd walked 10 miles from town, but I wasn't done yet. Across the bay, far in the distance, were towering cliffs, twice as grand as anything I'd walked past that day. Something about them called to me. I had to get there, just for a moment, before heading back. I underestimated the distance. As I made my way around the bay, dusk melted into night. The cliffs didn't get closer. The path became harder to follow. I realized with a sinking feeling that if I didn't turn back now, the tide might come in and trap me on the cliffside. Worse, I didn't bring a torch, just my phone flashlight already dimming. I turned around and made my way back through the settlement. It was a different place at night. The stone homes loomed darker now. I kept expecting to see a pale face in one of the windows. The boats looked more like skeletal remains than anything seaworthy. My breath fogged in front of me, and the only sound was the wind moving through the ruins. Until I heard the engine. A van pulled in from somewhere behind the houses. Its headlights cut across the old buildings as it rolled to a stop. 3 or 4 men climbed out, all younger, in their 20s maybe. I froze, ducking behind a boat. What were they doing here? One of them dragged over a rusted trash bin. Another lit something inside it. They were burning something, but I couldn't see what. I crept along the edge of the houses, heart pounding. I was too far from town to call for help, and no one knew I was here. The fire crackled behind me. One of the men turned and locked eyes with me. He didn't say anything, just stared, as if waiting to see what I'd do. The others noticed. Now 2 of them were watching me. Their faces were unreadable. Not angry, just cold. Too calm. I didn't run. That felt like it would make things worse. I walked, fast. My footsteps echoed against the stones. My ears tuned for the sound of theirs behind me, but they didn't follow. Still, I didn't breathe until I was out of the settlement and back on the trail. The trail was worse in the dark, narrow with sudden dips and loose stones. My phone's light barely reached the ground in front of me, and every sound, the crunch of pebbles, the howl of the wind, set my nerves on fire. But the worst wasn't behind me, it was just ahead. You see, what I haven't told you yet is that before I even reached that abandoned settlement, I had seen something else. Something wrong. About halfway around the bay, I had passed a narrow cut in the cliffs, a kind of natural inlet. I only noticed it because something caught my eye. Movement. I turned and saw what looked like a figure standing near the rocks. Not moving, just standing. First, I thought it was a person, then maybe a statue. But when I looked again, it was gone. I told myself I imagined it. I had to have imagined it. But when I finally made it back to town, mud-covered, freezing, and running on adrenaline, I noticed something odd. On my coat's right sleeve, there was a smear of dark gray, like ash or soot. I didn't go near the fire, and I didn't fall. So where had it come from? To this day, I don't have a good explanation. I don't know what the men were burning. I don't know why they were watching me. I don't know what I saw in that cut of cliff. And the thing is, I never got to finish that hike, because whatever was waiting past those distant cliffs, I'm not sure it wanted to be found. I've always loved scary stories, but I never expected to become one. My son and I have this little ritual. Every night we fall asleep to long YouTube playlists, usually ASMR, sometimes ambient rain sounds, but more often than not, spooky story compilations. There's something comforting about drifting off while someone softly tells tales of haunted houses, missing people, glitches in the Matrix. Weird, I know, but I've always had a thing for the paranormal. Even as a kid, I found ghost stories more cozy than creepy. Like the dark was something familiar, safe even, That night was no different. I queued up a playlist with some generic title, 3+ hours of true scary stories, and let it play while I curled up with my son in bed. I didn't even look at what stories were in it. I just needed the sound, something to carry me into sleep. I must have been out in minutes. The next thing I remember is waking up. The room was quiet, except for the soft glow of my phone screen. The video was still playing, some eerie voice telling a story. Nothing unusual, just background noise. I got up to use the bathroom, half asleep and barely thinking. Maybe 5 minutes passed. No more. When I climbed back into bed, the voice on the phone caught my attention. Not the tone, but the words. Above the pizza shop, a narrow staircase led to a small apartment. The back door opened into the kitchen. From there, a short hallway led to the living room. The windows always let in too much light at night. I froze. That was my childhood home. Exactly. The layout, the weird hallway that didn't quite make sense. The way the dining room glowed even when the lights were off because of the street lamp right outside the window. I hadn't thought about that apartment in years, but the memory flooded in, sharp and sudden. Then the story kept going. It was about a little boy. He wakes up in his mom's bed and realizes she's gone. He pads into the hallway, the floor's cold under his feet, looking for her. Then he sees his sister, me. The narrator said she was glowing. She stood at the end of the hallway, wearing a pink nightgown, one he'd seen her wear before. She didn't speak. She just raised one hand and beckoned him with her finger, slowly walking, floating, back toward the dark end of the hall. But something felt wrong. She had no legs, just a soft, white shimmer where her feet should have been. That's when the boy stepped back, heart pounding. And at that exact moment, he heard the heavy slam of the back door. He ran to the window and saw his mom, his 2 brothers, and his real sister, walking up the steps. Couldn't breathe. That was my story. The one my little brother has told our family for over 20 years. The one where he swears he saw a ghost version of me, glowing in the hallway when I wasn't even home. I was with my mom that night. We were just getting back from the grocery store. He saw me, but it wasn't me. We always laughed about it, teased him a bit, but he never backed down. His face would go serious every time. "It was you," he'd insist. "Same hair, same nightgown, but not you." He was only about 6 when it happened. I was 10. He remembers it like it happened yesterday. I always thought it was just a dream, a mix-up, one of those childhood blurs of sleep and imagination. But now someone was telling that story on YouTube, word for word, and I never told anyone. I never wrote it down. I never posted it online. I picked up the phone with shaking hands and rewound the video. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The story was second to last in the playlist. Nearly 3 hours in. We hadn't skipped to it. I hadn't even noticed it. I'd fallen asleep long before it started. But somehow I woke up 5 minutes before it played, like something wanted me to hear it. The next morning, after pacing around my kitchen in a daze, I sent the video to my brother. I didn't say anything at first, just, "You need to listen to this. Second to last story. Tell me if it sounds familiar." He texted back within 10 minutes. "Holy sh*T. That's mine." I posted it on Reddit a few years ago. I didn't think you'd ever see it. I didn't even know he had a Reddit account. He'd written it down years after it happened and submitted it to one of those creepy story threads, just for fun, just to see if anyone else had seen something like it. And somehow, randomly, coincidentally, it ended up in a playlist I clicked on without thinking, while I was half asleep, and somehow I woke up just before it played. I want to believe it was all just one of those strange little moments. Perfect digital storm. Algorithmic weirdness. A story buried online that rose to the surface at the exact right or wrong moment. But sometimes, late at night, I lie in bed and think about that glowing girl in the pink nightgown. I wonder what my brother really saw that night, because I remember that night clearly. I remember walking into the apartment behind my mom. I remember seeing my brother standing in the hallway, pale and wide-eyed. He never screamed, never said anything until later, just stared at me like I was already a ghost. And I wonder if what he saw wasn't just a dream, if it wasn't his imagination, if it wasn't me. What if whatever he saw that night has always been following me? What if it's been waiting? What if it finally found a way to speak? Not with words, but through a voice, a story. And what if, after all these years, it still wants me to listen? It didn't start with the laugh. It started with the silence. Look, I love my grandma. Truly. She's the sweetest woman alive. Feeds everyone who walks through her door. Remembers birthdays. Still sends handwritten letters like it's 1962. But her taste in kids' toys? Horrific. I'm not talking about the occasional odd antique or dusty porcelain doll with those unsettling glass eyes. I'm talking Chucky, a life-sized replica of the damn Chucky doll. Real clothes, stitched up face, the whole package. Sat in its own little armchair like it paid rent. I hated that thing. It lived in the corner of her toy room, just silently judging me every time I walked past the door. But funny enough, this story, this isn't about Chucky. This is about Big Bird. Yeah, that Big Bird. Bright yellow, wide-eyed, straight from Sesame Street. Only this one had energy. The wrong kind. It was this weird, old-school talking version with a plastic beak and faded feathers that always looked just a little damp. You'd squeeze its belly, and it would laugh. This shrill, cracked laugh like someone had played it too many times on a busted cassette. Cover its eyes, and it would go, "Peekaboo!" in that high-pitched, cartoon voice that was supposed to be cute. It wasn't. Not in that house. Not at night. My cousin and I were staying over one weekend. Just the two of us, like we used to when we were kids. We were deep into a long night of Black Ops 2 Zombies. The perfect setup. Energy drinks, pizza crusts everywhere. Every light in the house off except the TV glow. The only sound was the buzz of the game and our trigger fingers. We were in the zone. I was surviving, barely. And my cousin, he was carrying until suddenly he wasn't. He stopped moving, got swarmed by a horde and went down fast. I started roasting him like any good cousin would. "Damn, bro, again? I gotta carry you through round 27? But he didn't respond, didn't even blink. He just stared straight ahead at the wall like he was seeing through it. Then, without saying a word, he reached for the TV remote and slowly turned the volume down. And I swear, that silence? That's when the whole vibe of the room changed. I was halfway into making another joke when I heard it. A laugh. Not from the game, not from the TV, from the other side of the wall. The laugh was short, shaky, like static behind a smile. We both froze. That wall? It backed up to the toy room. The same room where that weird big bird sat propped up on a shelf between a Cabbage Patch Kid and a stack of old VHS tapes. Neither of us said a word. Then we heard it again, louder, clearer. Peek-a-boo. I looked at my cousin. His face was pale, just pale, like all the blood had dropped out of him at once. Dude, he whispered. What the fuck is happening? I couldn't answer. My mouth was dry. My ears were locked in, straining for the next sound. My hands were still on the controller, but I'd forgotten the game existed. We stared at the wall, like if we looked long enough we could see through it. And then it happened. That voice. That fucking voice. Soft, close, and this time different. I see you. I dropped the controller. I've never moved that fast in my life. Neither of us said anything. We just shot up out of our chairs and backed away from the wall like it was about to bleed. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. That's not what it says, my cousin muttered. That's not part of the toy, man. That's not. It's not programmed to say that. He was right. We both knew that toy. We'd stayed at Grandma's enough times. We knew its phrases. Peek-a-boo. Where are you? That creepy broken laugh. But never I see you. Never. I don't remember which of us opened the door to the toy room. I just know it wasn't locked. I wish it had been. I wish we'd had a reason not to go in. But we did. The light inside was dim. One bulb in the ceiling flickered like something out of a bad horror movie. And there he was, Big Bird, sitting upright in the center of the room. Not on the shelf where he usually was. On the floor, facing the door, staring. We didn't even step inside. Just stood there like statues, the cold draft from the room washing over us like a warning. My cousin leaned in slowly, squinting. Dude, look at its hands. I did. Its plastic wings were open wide, like it was ready for a hug, or to grab. And right there, in the fuzz of its belly, was a tiny, blinking red light. The toy didn't have a light. Not when we were kids. Not now. That was new. That was wrong. I closed the door. We locked it, turned on every light in the house, and left zombies running in the background just so we didn't have to sit in silence. We didn't talk about it again that night. Barely slept. The next morning, we opened the toy room door. Big Bird was back on the shelf, right between the VHS tapes and the Cabbage Patch Kid. No red light, no arms open, just sitting, smiling. I asked my grandma a few weeks later if the toy had ever been updated, or changed, or replaced. She laughed. No, honey, she said. That's the same one I had when your dad was little. It had no batteries in it. We checked. I've never stayed over there again. Sometimes the scariest part isn't what you saw, it's what you touched. When I was 12, maybe 13, I had this nightly routine. Stay up too late on my phone, scrolling through random videos, whispering with friends on Snapchat, wrapped up in the glow of the screen like it was some kind of digital campfire. My room would go pitch black except for the faint light beneath my covers. I thought I was slick, but my dad was slicker. He had this trick. He'd open my bedroom door slowly, wait a second like he was going to say goodnight, then quietly step away, only to double back a few seconds later to catch me out. So I got good at pretending to be asleep. Phone tucked under the pillow, breathing steady, eyes closed like I was auditioning for an Oscar. One night, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate. Here we go again, I thought. I did the usual. Phone off, shoved under the pillow, blanket up to my chin, deep breath, play dead. I felt the presence in the doorway, then heard the soft shift of feet. After a moment, I caught the faintest whisper of the floor creaking. A step back, the sound of retreat. I waited a good 30 seconds just to be sure. Then I opened my eyes, and there, standing beside my bed, was him. He looked just like my dad, tall, about 6 foot, broad shoulders, wearing a baseball cap which my dad always wore, even indoors, like it was glued to his head. But the room was dark, and I couldn't see the face, just the silhouette, solid, unmoving. My stomach flipped. I've been caught. That was my first thought. So, trying to soften the blow, I said, "Sorry, Dad. My friend's having a rough time. I just wanted to make sure she was okay." He didn't say anything. "No, it's all right. No, go to sleep." Nothing. I felt a weird twinge in my chest. That silence felt off. So I stood up and walked over, guilt still heavy on my shoulders. I gave him a hug, arms around that familiar frame. I even said, "Good night." Still nothing. Just a presence. Tall, still, cold. "Dad," I whispered, "you okay?" And that's when I heard it. A sound that didn't belong to anyone I knew. A kind of low growl. Not threatening exactly, but not human either. A guttural vibration that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than the throat. Like it rattled in its chest. I stepped back. My heart was thudding now. I didn't want to show fear. I didn't know why. But something told me to just turn around and lie back down. So I did. I turned away from it, pulled the blanket up like a shield, closed my eyes, and prayed. Eventually, I fell asleep. When I woke up, sunlight filled the room. Everything looked normal, ordinary, stupid even. My phone buzzed beside me like it always did. The fear I felt the night before felt distant, fuzzy, like a dream you're already forgetting. But I was angry. I went downstairs and confronted my dad, ready to tell him he'd taken the whole "busted you on your phone" routine way too far. He looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? Last night, you were in my room," I said, arms folded. "You just stood there, didn't say anything." Freaked me out. He shook his head slowly. "I wasn't home last night. I had night shift, remember?" I blinked. "No, you were here. You were in my room." He got quiet. "I didn't get back until after 6 a.m. Ask your gran." So I did. My grandma was in the kitchen, slowly making tea, hunched over the way she always was. She smiled at me in that way only grandmas can. Warm, sleepy, a little amused. I asked her if she'd checked on me last night. Maybe she had been the one by my bed. But she just chuckled. "Honey, I can barely get up those stairs." And she was right. She was frail, 5 feet tall on a good day. Needed help carrying her own groceries. There's no way she could have stood at my bedside silently, let alone mimicked the solid, heavy shape I'd seen. I told them both everything. The silence, the figure, the hug, the growl. My dad's face went stiff. He tried to laugh it off. Too many horror movies before bed. But I could tell he was shaken, more than he let on. The family wrote it off as a dream, an overactive imagination. But it didn't feel like a dream, and I know what dreams feel like. I've had nightmares. I've had sleep paralysis. I know when I'm awake, and I was awake. What still haunts me isn't what I saw. It's that I touched it, felt the weight, the shape, the size. It was solid. If it was a shadow person, how could I wrap my arms around it? If it was a burglar, some stranger in the house, why didn't they take anything? Why didn't anything creak or click or slam when they left? Why did they just vanish? And that voice, that growl, I've never heard anything like it since. But sometimes, when I'm lying in bed and I hear footsteps in the hallway, years later, as an adult, I still tense up. My heart still races, because I'm not sure what I hugged that night. But I know it wasn't my dad, and whatever it was, it knew me. It was just supposed to be a fun family trip. I didn't know it would be the moment that changed everything. I was about 8 years old when we visited Union Station in Ogden, Utah. It was one of those family outings that didn't seem like a big deal at the time. Something to keep us busy on a warm afternoon. History, trains, some old buildings, harmless fun. The station had just celebrated its 100-year anniversary after being rebuilt in 1924, following a fire that destroyed the original. My parents told me it was a place full of history, especially from the World Wars. I didn't know much about that stuff back then. I was more focused on the trains outside. The huge, black metal beasts with faded paint and rusted rivets that sat like sleeping giants in the sun. Even as a kid, though, I could feel something weird about that place. Not like something you see or hear, more like something your gut tells you. Certain rooms in the station felt heavy, like walking into a place where someone had just been crying. I didn't have words for it then, but now I'd call it energy. Haunted energy. It clung to the walls and floors like a shadow that never left. But none of that scared me yet. I was too distracted by the old trains outside the south end of the building. They were awesome. You could climb inside some of them, walk through the cars, and imagine what it must have been like back when they actually rolled across the country. Felt like stepping into another world. One of the trains was a Baldwin 060 steam locomotive, black, imposing, and marked with its military past. It had been used to transport troops and equipment. And behind it were the passenger carts where soldiers used to sit, probably on their way to something terrifying, or coming back from it. I ran up the little steps into one of those cars, full of excitement, not even thinking about the heaviness I felt before. Inside, it was dim. The sunlight barely made it through the narrow windows. Dust particles floated in the air like frozen snow. That's when the energy hit me. It was like a wall. One moment I was running around like any kid would, and the next I stopped. Just stopped. My chest felt tight. My skin prickled like cold fingers were brushing over it. Something about that cart demanded silence, like walking into a church or a graveyard. I didn't know why, but I started walking more carefully, slower, respectful even. Halfway down the car, I heard it. A whisper, right in my ear. Help me. I didn't move. Couldn't. My whole body froze. It was a man's voice, soft, strained, like someone barely hanging on. It didn't feel like a sound from behind or in front of me. It felt like it came from inside the air next to my face, like someone had leaned in close. My first thought was that someone was messing with me. My brothers, maybe. But when I whipped around, no one was there. Just the open air and empty seats. That's when I ran. Full sprint, heart hammering in my ears. I scrambled down the steps of the cart and skidded into the gravel, breath ragged. I turned back to see if someone was following. And that's when I saw it. Through one of the small windows leading into the next cart, there was a figure. Dark, vague, a shadow, but not like a shadow cast by light. More like a shadow with form. Maybe 5 feet 10 inches, skinny, arms hanging low by its sides. No face, just a smooth void where features should be. It didn't move. It just stared. At me. I didn't scream. Couldn't. My whole body felt like ice. That deep, twisting fear in your stomach that you only get when you realize something is wrong on a level you don't understand yet. I turned and ran again, this time not stopping until I found my family. When I finally saw my papa, the tears came. I could barely talk. I was shaking, trying to explain what I saw, what I heard. My words tumbled out between hiccuped sobs. There was a man in the train. He whispered. He had no face. My papa, a Marine and a man who never laughed off the paranormal, got serious real fast. He asked me to show him where it happened. I didn't want to go back, but I did. We walked back to the cart slowly, my hand tight in his. I pointed to the window where I saw the figure. Of course, it was empty now, just glass and shadows. But Papa didn't doubt me, not for a second. He bent down beside me and said something I've never forgotten. "If you ever run into something like that again," he said, "you tell it this: I saw you, and you must stay here. That keeps it from following you." I repeated it out loud, right there in front of the cart. "I saw you, and you must stay here." It felt silly at first, but as the words left my mouth, I felt something shift inside me, like I'd taken a little of the fear back, like I'd drawn a line in the sand. We left soon after. The rest of the trip is a blur, but I never forgot that voice or that shadow. Not ever. Looking back now, that moment, standing in that haunted cart, hearing that whisper, it changed something in me. It opened a door. Since then, I've had other experiences, other moments where the line between this world and something else feels paper thin. I've gone on paranormal investigations with my papa. I've seen and heard things that would make most people run. But nothing ever felt quite like that first encounter. I've been back to Union Station since. I've walked through those same train cars. Nothing happened. No voices. No shadows. But every time I pass that spot, I still whisper under my breath, "I saw you, and you must stay here." Not every ghost is dead. Some walk in daylight, whispering your name, waiting for the night to come. Growing up in a small, forgotten town means knowing everyone's story, whether you want to or not. It's the kind of place where people cling to routine and reputation, where secrets don't stay buried, and kids are cruel because they've never been taught better. There was this boy, I'll call him E. He lived just down the road from me, maybe a quarter mile, in a weather-worn trailer sagging on its foundation. His family was poor, the kind of poor that doesn't show up in statistics, but in the grease on your clothes, the way your shoes never fit quite right, the way people look through you instead of at you. They had another son, E's older brother, who was severely mentally handicapped, couldn't walk, speak, eat on his own. Their father worked endless shifts at a nearby factory while their mother stayed home as a full-time caregiver. And somehow, even under that weight, they tried to make a life, tried to give their sons what little peace they could. But school was hell for E. Kids teased him relentlessly. His smell, his clothes, the unspoken shame of being different, poor, tethered to a brother who couldn't even say his name. I never joined in the teasing. I didn't have the courage to stand up for him either, but I sat next to him on the bus. We talked about Transformers. When the live-action movie came out, I bought him the DVD for his birthday. He didn't say much, but his eyes lit up in that quiet way that says more than words ever could. From kindergarten to 6th grade, I watched him change. He started just like any of us, awkward, loud, hopeful. But by the time we hit middle school, he'd grown into something else. Withdrawn, unpredictable. Sometimes he'd sit for hours without saying a word. Other times he'd scream at classmates, at teachers, at himself. When my parents pulled me out of public school to homeschool me, I didn't realize that would be the last time I saw E as a kid. But I'd still see him, walking, every day, like clockwork. He walked the long stretch of road near our homes, a scrawny teenager with wild hair, mumbling to himself. For miles of empty fields and tired fences, and there he was, talking to the air, yelling at cows, glaring at passing cars. Then, one day in 8th grade, I didn't see him anymore. Curious, I texted a friend who still went to school with him. The reply chilled me. He had brought a gun to school after a humiliating rejection. He followed a girl into the locker room with every intention of pulling the trigger. But the gun was empty. A teacher saw him go in and tackled him before anyone got hurt. He was arrested and spent the next 3 years in juvenile detention. After he got out, he never returned to school. But the walking resumed. Only now it was different. He wore a full military outfit, combat boots, bomber jacket, beret. He hadn't enlisted. They wouldn't take him. But he wore the uniform anyway. Rain or shine. Always walking. Always talking to himself. Once, when I was riding my bike to a friend's house, I passed him. I called out a friendly, cautious "Hey." He stopped, turned, and screamed, "I'll kill you and your whole family for what you did to me." I kept riding, fast. Didn't sleep well that night. Years passed. I left for college, far away from the town and the past. But one summer after my freshman year, I came home to visit. Driving down the road to my parents' house, I saw him. He, walking the same stretch in the same clothes. As I passed, he turned his head and locked eyes with me. Then he screamed one word, "Kill!" He didn't know which house was mine, but he knew the road, and he saw where I turned. I drove straight into our garage and shut it behind me. My heart was pounding. Maybe I was being paranoid, but my gut said otherwise. The day passed normally. I didn't tell my parents. That night, I opened my bedroom window for the breeze. Second story, safe enough, I thought. I woke around 2 a.m. to the faint creak of wood outside my door. I dismissed it as someone heading to the bathroom. Tried to go back to sleep. 20 minutes later, I heard another creak. Different this time. It was the sound the floor made right in front of my closet. I sat up. Moonlight poured through my window, illuminating my room in soft, silver blue. And in that quiet glow, I saw him. He, lanky, wild-eyed, standing just feet away. Not a dream. Not a shadow. Him. I didn't wait to see what he had in his hands. If anything, I bolted from my bed and shoved past him, flinging open the door and screaming for my family. The panic hit them instantly. We all ran into the hallway just as E came charging after me. Then, as fast as he appeared, he vanished. He ran down the stairs, out the front door, and into the dark. The police were called. We gave them his name, told them where he lived. But when they went to his house, he wasn't there. And they never found him. That was 7 years ago. My parents have moved since then. So have I. But I never visit home without scanning the roads, watching the tree lines, checking over my shoulder. People say if you don't stand up for someone, you're part of the problem. I don't know if I was ever cruel to him. I tried to be kind. I thought I was. But in the end, it didn't matter. Because for E, the damage was already done. And sometimes the things we run from the fastest are the ones that know exactly where to find us. You've made it through the hour. The stories are over now, and the night is quiet again. Let the silence soothe you. Whatever followed you from the tales, leave it here. You're safe, you're calm, and you're already drifting deeper into rest. If you enjoyed these stories, consider subscribing to Dark Reddit for more nightly chills. Until next time, sleep well.